gosh, dog.
Let's make some ribbons. Even better. That tickles. Extra sharp. Good choice. Now we're talking.
And ruled by fate. There's one alone who can wield fate. One alone whose story is in their own hands. The Fate Maker. That's you. Heavy, right?
You seek passage. I can aid you.
I am Valentine, gallant adventurer. The scary stabby one is Fred.
The undead fall beneath our blades! Ah!
I'm sensing some real evil vibes this way. Now follow me!
A beautiful body indeed. And full of power! I'm invincible!
Looking bad. How do we win this?
We attack! Together! For the Queen!
You'll never get the Sword of Souls, you idiot! You want to fight? I'll give you a fight!
That's a big boy. That's a big, big boy.
Sisters, I believe we have found our champion.
Oh, listen to me, lip-flapping while you could be off adventuring.
Tina, you left a cheese curl on the board.
Mayhaps it is a powerful ancient meteor, and it begins to rise from the ground.
This isn't a blessing! It's a blasting!
Hold on. What game are we playing here?
We're playing Bunkers and Badasses, baby!
I don't know why I do this to myself. It is currently 10:09 p.m. and I need to make some parts tonight so they can go out tomorrow. Not only do I need to make the parts, but look at these tools I have to use to do so. So that's a penny. And this is a 0.3 millimeter drill. And this is a 0.2 millimeter drill. I literally just broke the 0.3 millimeter by putting it in a box too hard. So that bodes well for this project happening tonight. The part is actually pretty simple as long as we can make it without breaking these tiny drills. Now, unfortunately, I can't show you this part, but what I did is the same thing I did last time. I designed a part that kind of looks like the part, but is completely different in all aspects and all features, with the exception of the hole sizes on this one. So I'll be able to show you making this part, which I'll use as kind of a setup part. Like I said, as long as we can get the holes drilled, the rest of it will be easy. So the setup part will help me get there. But I get to show you the whole process this way instead of having to like blur the picture of the part or something lame like that. Speaking of which, this is our part. Now, there are a bunch of holes that I'm drilling. I'm drilling 6.2 millimeter holes and then 1.3 millimeter holes. We have this nice little step here, and I have conveniently made the outside diameter 1 millimeter and the height of this 0.5 millimeter. The actual part is just slightly bigger than that, but for dialing in like tool wear offsets to get the diameter and the height of this dead nuts, it's easier to do it with round numbers. So for a setup part, I might as well use the round numbers. This will be a one operation part. We're going to be starting by facing off the whole stick of material and then drilling our hole. Well, then we're going to be spot drilling our holes. Then we will be drilling our holes. First the 0.2 millimeter, then the 0.3 millimeter. Then we'll be doing some adaptive clearing with a 1/8 inch end mill, and then profiling the top ring here, and then profiling the bottom ring. And lastly, we will be using a slitting saw to part this off. We'll tab it off, and then I will just use some sandpaper to get rid of the tab on the bottom. And we do have some tight tolerances we need to hold on this. The outside diameter is plus or minus 1 thou, in addition to the height and that little step height. So definitely the kind of part that you want to be making at like 2 a.m., which is, I have a feeling, how this project is going to end. In the last video, we made my smallest ever part, and then immediately made a new part that was my smallest ever part. This part will again be my smallest ever part. So I have 3 parts in a row running that have set records for my smallest part. Now, out of sheer luck, we get to use the same setup and even the same material as those last parts. So all I have to do is move this up and reset my work coordinate system. I only needed to set the 2 drill bits to be able to run this part. Everything else uses core tools, which is convenient. And we're pretty much ready to press cycle start. I have a feeling this is either going to be a very short project or a very long one. I always get a bunch of questions about it. This torque wrench adapter is from Martin Precision Tools. And yes, I know that with normal torque wrench adapters, you're supposed to do them at 90 degrees because it helps with the math or something. But this one has a little QR code on it. You scan that QR code, you type in your torque numbers and some information about your wrench, and it converts the torque values for you to account for the added length of the wrench. So stop whining. Wow, that came out really Hoosier. So again, we will be using the end mill to set our work offset height. I'm just gonna jog down close, move into tense mode, and just kind of wiggle this 2 thou shim until I feel it start to drag. The work coordinate system here really actually isn't that important. It doesn't need to be that precise. The material is so much smaller than the part is so much smaller than the material that we could be off by like 1/8 of an inch and it would still work. And of course, single block, 5% rapids, feed rate down at, I don't know, 30%, 20%, and options stop. Now we should be able to run this. So I knew how small this part was in CAD. CAD did not do it justice. Holy crap, that thing is tiny. I'm gonna lose so many of these. So for context, that is Abraham Lincoln on a penny sniffing my part. I did not understand how small this part was. I knew the numbers, I did not understand. Anyway, some of our geometry appears to be there, but most of it is really ugly. Now, particularly, it looks like our end mill is in bad shape, and there's like 3 stair steps when there's not supposed to be. And then also there's some burrs on the top that we'll need to get rid of. I started working on getting that tab off the backside, and then I dropped it, so we need to make another one. But I'm gonna replace that 1/8 inch end mill that I used for the outside with a brand new fresh one. When you use your naked eyeball, this end mill looks brand new. But you can see under magnification there's just a teeny tiny chip in the corner, and that was enough to ruin that part. I think what I'm actually gonna do is put another copy of this end mill in the machine, and I'm gonna have a rougher and a finisher. We're gonna rough with this end mill, and then come back with a brand new finisher that's only going to do the profiles. All right, let's try this again. This time I'm using a roughing tool and a finishing tool. I've also added some more deburring. So hopefully this one goes a little bit better, and hopefully we don't lose the part this time.
Depends on if Steven gets back with me now.
And we have a new problem. So I tried to make the tab a little bit smaller so it'd be easier to remove, and the part's gone. So I made the tab too small, and it's somewhere in the machine, and there's no way I'm ever finding that part. So we gotta make another one. This one is definitely looking better. It's not perfect, but it's better. I think the big issue is the part's supposed to have like some open pockets here, and I think burrs are getting pushed into them. They're supposed to look like this here, but it looks like this. I'm also not sure that extra deburring I did any good, but I want to at least measure this and see if we're in the right ballpark. I dropped it again. I was trying to put it under the microscope at a different angle with these needle noses, and it went flying. So let's make another one.
Yeah, if I wait till 9 o'clock, it's 2 hours.
Yeah. It's about 1:20 a.m. right now. I am not having a lot of luck with these parts. I'm getting a part. Like, I have something to hold, sort of. It's small, so you can't really hold it, but I have something to put under my microscope. But it is coming out so ugly that I would not send it to a customer. It's all... you're going to have a hard time seeing it on camera here, but it's all, like, wrinkly and stuff.
I'll just stay late.
I've tried a couple different ways of finishing the outside. This one was a bore tool path. My last one was just a normal 2D contour. 2D contour worked better than the bore tool path.
I should have my internet.
But we're not improving, and I need to be improving on these parts. So, I don't know. I'm considering going to bed because I'm just hitting my head against the wall. I might think of something better in the morning. I'll try one more tonight, and then if we're not making progress, I'll go to bed and hope I get a sudden revelation tomorrow. Yeah, here's a better angle. You can see that at the holes, it's not really cutting. It's just kind of tearing. And sorry, I know that's a little wiggly, but it's hard to hold this steady at this scale. So it's like not, yeah, it's not cutting. It's kind of tearing and grinding the material aside. Basically, I think the whole part is becoming a burr. Maybe speeds and feeds on that finishing end mill. Maybe I need to go faster. Maybe I'm rubbing. Let me try that. We are now at 3:35 a.m. So I've been at this a few hours now, and I'm tired. I'm getting closer, though. We're getting closer to a good part. Now, I did change to making the actual part, not my, like, fake part that I designed. my part was actually a little bit smaller because I rounded down to a millimeter to make it easier to measure. But I realized that, like, I rounded down like 0.1 millimeters. I was like, oh, that's nothing. That's not going to make a difference. Well, first rule of small parts is don't lose track of scale. That's still 10% smaller. Well, 10% bigger. So making that switch has helped. I played a bunch with speeds and feeds and tool paths, just, you know, tiny tweaks at a time, and we're getting closer. I'm running into two issues now. One is the holes still want to wander, and two, they want to have burrs in them. So I'm about to try another solution to fix the wandering. I'm going to use a bigger drill bit to spot drill them first, and then go in and drill the actual hole. I didn't have any sort of spot drill that was small enough for this, like a traditional spot drill. So I was using a ball mill to make a little tiny point, a 1/32 inch ball mill. But I think that ball mill is too large of a radius, as crazy as that sounds with a 1/32 inch ball mill. And it was still letting the drills wander. So I'm hoping by using a larger drill, it's like a number 54 or something like that. It's like 1.5 millimeters, which, by the way, is bigger than my entire part. But if I go in and make a shallow spot with that, I'm hoping that will help. All right, it is 4:02, and I have a part that pretty much everything is good on. The one exception is it still has the tab on the back, and I'm not really sure how to get rid of that tab yet. So I guess I'm going to go to sleep for a bit and see if I can come up with something in the morning. Okay, so when I left off last night, I was able to get like all the features of the part good, and I was just left with the problem of getting rid of that tab. So that is the task for the next couple hours here. I have a couple things to try. I was talking to Fidget Things, and he recommended just making a little jig so I can hold it and sand it off, which might be the sensible way. I'm also going to try doing it in soft jaws. The advantage of doing it in soft jaws is I can use the little handles that are left on the machine, basically the tabs that are bigger than the part itself. I can use that to load it, and then when I'm ready to unload it, I can just use a pair of tweezers. So while I warm up the machine here, I am going to start work on designing those soft jaws and getting that programmed. And then while I'm doing some tests with that, I'm going to start trying to make a jig to see if I can sand off the tab. Okay, we are on to something. I got most of the way there on that last part. I ended up we got most of the way there on that last part. It ended up being a little bit out of tolerance in terms of flatness, but that's just a skill issue and something I can fix with a little bit of practice. I have a couple hours to get these done. I only need 10 of them, and they only take 3 minutes to machine. So even if I screw up half of them, we're fine. This right here is my jig. If we look under the microscope, you can see basically just at the end of the piece of plastic here, I have drilled a teeny tiny hole. That hole lets me take the part when it comes off the mill. It has that little tab on there, so I'm able to use that tab as a handle, push it into that hole, and then use some flush cutters to cut off the tab, where I can then bring the part to its final size on some sandpaper. I have this lapping set up here with some good high quality fine grit sandpaper on a nice glass sheet. It gives me a very flat area to work with, and by just taking that part and, you know, very gently and very carefully sanding off that tab, we can get a finished backside. And then I get to move to the very tedious task of measuring each part. It's doable. It just takes a lot of attention to detail and looking through that little, you know, magnifier thing I have and using tweezers to manipulate the part. It's not easy, but it's doable. Still making more progress, but I'm having a hard time getting my parallelism constraint between, or my parallelism tolerance between the top and the bottom of the pieces. which makes sense because I'm doing it by hand. I just don't have that fine muscle control that I need to be able to hit such a tight tolerance. So, I'm gonna make a jig. That's my new plan. I'm gonna run off the rest of these. I'm gonna make a bunch extra. I'm gonna make like 20, even though I only need to ship 10. And then I'm going to make a jig to help me sand the back splats. We are officially making progress. I have 2, yes, 2 of 10 good parts. Now, the trick definitely ended up being this little jig. I was gonna machine it, but then I realized I have a 3D printer. So I have a piece of Ultem that can slide back and forth in there, and then it's just a 3D printed ring. And what I do is I load the part into that piece of Ultem and then put this against the sandpaper and like push down on the ring. And that both sets the part into its little cavity, and then also the ring levels everything out. And from there, it just takes 1 or 2 very gentle slides on the lapping paper, the sandpaper, and that gets rid of the tab, and then I can measure it. Measuring is definitely the hard part because I have a tendency to lose the parts. Or in this case, I have lost my 0.3 millimeter gauge pin. So it could be on the table, it could be on the floor, it could be stuck to my shirt. I don't know. I think the lesson learned here is that if I'm going to be working on parts like this all the time, I need to have a very organized, a very neat work area with lots of little containers that I can put things in. I need to have my tools in a more organized holding device, some sort of desktop organizer, because I tend to lose things when I am grabbing tools. So next time I have a job like this come in, I'm going to invest greatly in my desk setup. I have found my gauge pin. I think it's exactly where I set it, which was near the corner of my drawing here. I turned over my drawing so you guys couldn't see it. There are just some scratches, and this little gauge pin just happens to look like those scratches. Okay, back to inspecting these. The tale of the tiny parts continues. This is day 2 of the tiny parts. I got the ones made out of stainless a couple days ago. A weekend happened in between. And now I need to finish up this order with the mild steel ones. So it's exactly the same part. Technically, it was a separate order with a different due date. So I already shipped the stainless ones, and the mild steel ones will go this afternoon. So I'm running the first one right now. I don't expect it to be any different than the stainless one. I see no reason why I can't just use the exact same program, hit go, and get good parts. So as soon as this first one comes off the mill, I'll check it and find out, but this should be a fairly easy day without too much drama. Famous last words. Though on the opposite side of things, this piece of plastic came in today. That's about $1,000 worth of Delrin. There's like 4 different jobs that are coming out of that big piece and like 35 or 36 different parts. Honestly, I would much prefer to have this already cut up for me, but as I was looking around at prices, this was the only economical way. And Delrin cuts easy enough on like a table saw. And then our parts for tomorrow come out of this. But anyway, I'm gonna go into time-lapse mode. I'm gonna get the rest of these made. I'm gonna get the rest of these inspected. And then I think we're gonna go back to the demo part that I can show you, and we'll walk through the whole process a little bit more slowly in a way that hopefully makes sense. I have a confession for you guys. It's been like 3 weeks since I recorded the last segment of this video. A lot has happened. Basically, the job immediately after the one that I just showed, I got behind on, and that kind of snowballed into me, being right at the deadline for every other job that I was doing. So I have one more job that I'm working on today. It's due tomorrow, and it requires a whole bunch of material removal, but is otherwise a fairly simple part. So I'm probably not going to show that one because I want to just get moving on it. But I wanted to go ahead and wrap up this video so that I could get it published. So I learned a lot of things in the process of making this part. And basically the problem I was running into during production was burrs. Burrs were my big issue. Because remember, this part is very small. So even a small burr makes it causes a big problem. And the burrs were coming from this hole right here, or these holes going around. Remember, this isn't actually the customer part, but it has some similarities, this hole being one of them. So I ended up doing a couple things. The first thing, and I kept relearning this lesson during the course of this part, sharp tooling. Every time I switched to a new tool, things came out better. I also used some of my tolerance allowance to put a larger fillet on this here, which just kind of gave it a little bit more strength. We're just talking a couple thou, but a couple thou made a big difference. I tried several variations of how to do this hole. I did not have an end mill small enough to get in here and deburr it, so it basically had to come out right the first time. And what I ended up doing was something that I have never found a reason to do during any of my machining career, and that is I took a conventional cut, a conventional finishing pass around this. And I would start with a traditional climb cutting, go around once, and then I would do the final finishing pass with conventional, and then I would come back and I would climb cut again. And what that would do is it would like move the burr one way, then the other, and then it would come off. So that's how I was eventually able to get this fairly burr free. After doing that, I was able to use a gauge pin to just, push any other burrs through, and then I sanded off the bottom. So, push the burrs through and then sanded them off. That also worked here in the center hole. The other problem I had was the darn part would go flying. Like constantly, all the time. I lost so many of these parts. I did get out this little magnifier lamp that has a ring light underneath it. That helped immensely for doing the little tedious tasks like deburring and measuring. Inspection was another hard part. Again, mostly due to just handling the parts. I ended up grabbing some of my wife's tweezers, taking them to my belt grinder and like sharpening them. And this gave me a good way to hold the parts. When they came off of the machine, let me grab one here. When they come off of the machine, they are on this nice long tab that's left off from using the slitting saw tab. So I'm able to grab the parts by that tab, and then I had this tool that I used to sand off the tab on the bottom, and I would use this here and insert this. I wouldn't do that. Actually, I did do that a couple times. So put it into my sanding jig, there we go. Then I can use my side cutters, which again, I ground to be even more flush. And so now this part is embedded inside my little jig. I can take it to the sandpaper and sand off that tab. And then once that tab is gone, I was able to take a gauge pin and very carefully put that gauge pin into the little center hole. And then I kind of have it on like a lollipop. And I could use the gauge pin to handle the parts as I very carefully got in there with my micrometer and measured the features and measured the stuck gauge pins in the other holes, etc. And then it went straight from the gauge pin into a bag or a no-go bin if the part wasn't good. And that seemed to be a pretty reliable way of handling them without losing them. It literally trying to, the parts, this is the part. Like, these things are so small and I lost so many of them. It was a good lesson in that if I want to continue doing this stuff, one, I do need an optical measuring system. I also just need better tools for handling them. I know watchmakers use a putty, it's kind of like a sticky tack that they use to handle small parts, and I understand why now. I also need a bigger assortment of tweezers, I need some trays, I need better lighting. And I can do these small parts. My machine is capable. I need to develop some skills, and I need to develop my work area in my metrology suite. So I would not have taken these parts if I truly understood how small they actually were, but I was able to figure out how to get them done in the end. Anyway, hopefully it makes sense. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you after my mill devours 40 pounds of Delrin.
This is me, pop star.
What is spruing and why should you care? Hi, I'm James here at the University of North Texas Metalsmithing and Jewelry Studio today, and we're going to be talking about spruing your pieces for lost wax casting. So there's some other videos relating to this whole process, but we're just going to focus on spruing, which is creating a system of pathways for the metal to get to your wax piece in order for it to be cast. So particularly for beginners, spruing can be a little bit confusing or even overwhelming, mainly because you have to think about 3 different stages